Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Mary Foley, your host, and I'm so glad that you've joined us for another edition of the Life and Legacy program. The mission of the Merryman House Domestic Crisis Center is to save, build, and change lives. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that." And today we're going to be talking about the issue of domestic violence and the darkness it brings, and the hope that the Merryman House can offer to those who are able to access our programs. I'd like to welcome to our show today three very special guests, and we're going to be talking specifically about the economic support programs, how they work, and what success really does look like after domestic violence. So I'd like to welcome Marisa Young-White, Amanda, and Amber. Welcome, ladies, to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves, and then we're going to go to Marisa to just get us started because you are the supervisor or the director of economic support at the Merryman House. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and these other ladies, and we'll get started.
Okay. My name is Marisa Young-White. I'm the director of economic support services for the Merryman House.
Okay.
My name is Amanda O'Brien, and I'm one of their success stories.
And I'm going to let you ladies just look at me so I can keep my eye on you all and we can talk together.
My name is Amber Downey, and I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I'm also a success story.
Well, thank you all for being here. It is always a pleasure to talk with staff, but it is an additional pleasure to be able to just really get to talk to the ladies who have benefited from the programs and to hear your journey. So thank you for sharing that with us. Marisa, I'm going to let you start. What in the world is the Economic Support Department, and what does it do?
Well, we offer a variety of services. In the economic Department of Economic Support Services, we have different programs that help survivors to become self-sufficient. And one of those programs that we offer are the microloan program. We also have individual development accounts, which help survivors to obtain assets. And we offer financial literacy classes as well as tax-free preparation.
So quite a lot. And before we kind of launch into what that really does mean in layman's terms, if you would, I think we probably need to kind of pause and ask a greater question of why in the world would individuals that are victimized in a domestic violence relationship need those types of services. And so the Merryman House offers a shelter, it offers programming, it offers outreach services, and I think sometimes either folks don't know about us at all, or they just think we're an emergency shelter and are unaware maybe of the scope of domestic violence and where it leaves individuals and why they would need all those things that you added. So how long have you, Marisa, been with the Merryman House?
I've been with the Merryman House for 10 years.
Okay, and so from your perspective, and then we'll get to these ladies, from your perspective, why do domestic violence victims or survivors need an economic support program?
Well, because there are so many barriers. Once they are able to leave an abusive relationship and come into shelter, or you know, some people don't come into shelter, but they still need to be able to start their lives over again. And part of that is to be able to obtain housing. And some of the barriers that they've come across are not having transportation, not having housing. And so this program removes some of those barriers for them so that they're able to have those things without having to be involved in an abusive relationship.
Okay. So Amanda and Amber, I'm going to let you all just jump in as you wish. I'm going to just start with you, Amanda, because you're closest to me. Is that the case for you? What brought you to the Merryman House?
Initially, when I separated from my husband, I went to, obviously to the police, and when I had filed the DBO, they gave me, they give you a whole packet of different resources and stuff. Merryman was one of those. I contacted the advocate mainly because when you start that whole process, there's such, the legal side and just, you're a little overwhelmed, very good word, with everything going on, because you were just living your life, and the next day you're in the middle of a legal system and court system and everything. It was good to have somebody to talk to, and somebody who knew enough about what, I was going through to say, okay, this is what you need to do. This is, someone just kind of walk you through the process. And then I saw it because I actually never went into shelter. I was able to go through the outreach programs and then was able to get counseling services, and they were the ones that referred me to the financial aspect because they knew my goals, that, it was my goal to eventually own my own home and, starting from scratch with, no checking, no savings, no job, and having 2 small kids in the midst of all that.
I mean, that is overwhelming,
Yes.
and it is life altering. And we had talked a little bit before the program started just about sometimes that is one of the biggest obstacles in and of itself, is having to come to terms with putting a name with what it is that you're dealing with and what you're then having to respond to. And so
Right.
it takes a tremendous amount of courage. What about you, Amber? What brought you to the Merryman House?
I woke up one morning and my husband, out of the blue, lost his temper and basically tried to beat me to death. And within the next 2 days, I had immediate reconstructive surgery to my face. I was being watched, by my family at all times when I was sleeping, and I was really, really out of it. And my best friend told me about the Merryman House and asked if I would like to go talk to one of the advocates in Murray. And I did. I went and talked to Carla, and she offered me safety, and they saw me as the victim. And in the rest of this situation, besides outside of my family, I was not seen as the victim of this horrible thing that had just happened to us. And I went with my best friend, and she drove me to the shelter, and I had not felt safe since the moment that it happened. And when I went through the gates, I felt safe. And I continued to feel safe for 6 months while we stayed there, and I kept my child safe, and they provided me with a magnificent advocate, Marissa, and her and the rest of the women that worked with me guided me through what I was going through, because I didn't even know that I was in an abusive relationship at all, and had been for over 5 years. And then out of the blue, he put his hands on me and I almost died. And they helped me apply for a medical card, food stamps, K-TAP. I didn't have to worry about providing for my child immediately, and that was the biggest worry on my mind. They put a roof over my head, and when it was time for us to exit the shelter, they helped me achieve a home through Winterwood, and I still live there with my son. And we have not had to rely on anyone that we didn't trust or were afraid of to help us for almost 3 years now. The economic support program in the outreach office has helped me fix my car, helped me keep insurance on my car. They have helped me pay my electric bill when the funds were out at the local places, and they have provided me with Christmas money and Christmas gifts for my child. They have given me resources where I can further help myself. And the most recent thing, I got the microloan, and it was $500, and I was able to do things with that money that allowed me to be more self-sufficient and allowed me to be less reliant on other people in my life. Basically put like a ground on something that I could build on from there with the money that I had coming in every month. And now, as I repay that microloan, I'll also be building my credit. And so I feel very much more confident because of the help that I received for them, and I don't think I could have done it without them.
Well, thank you both for all of that information, and just, really that's the power of a program like this, is there are viewers watching that will be able to relate. And so I think there's several points I'd like to touch on before we kind of throw the ball back to Marisa and then you two together. But I think you bring up a very important point, and that is that to you it feels out of the blue. You woke up and all of a sudden there's domestic violence. But to us, if I hear you right, we were able to show that it rarely is out of the blue. There's a process, a grooming process, a spectrum, that if we're able to intervene a little bit further down here, then hopefully women like you don't have to be at the point of death, but it's certainly possible. And so one of the take-home points, I guess, for viewers is I would like for them to know is that domestic violence does have signs and symptoms and warning signs before sometimes, not all the time, we get to a place like that. And then, Amanda, you spoke about being at that place and struggling through how do I take care of my kids, and and you did as well, and how do I do this, and what is this going to look like, and it's overwhelming. And so you sort of both encompassed really what the Merryman House, the mission and the heartbeat is to assist in a comprehensive way in the saving, building, and changing of lives. And so for the remainder of our time, we're going to narrow that focus down to specifically economic support, and both of you have accessed programming that's real intent is to provide self-sufficiency, right? We don't want you dependent on programs or people. We want you to be able to find those strengths and skills within yourself to continue on your life's journey. And so, Marisa, that's really your life's mission, I think, is to advocate and to help women reach self-sufficiency. So these ladies enrolled in a program. What is it? How does it work?
Okay. It is the economic support services, and the reason it's so important is because once you're safe, you have to be able to provide certain things for yourself and your family. Asset building, the microloans help them to, it's a no interest loan. And it helps them to be able to build their credit so that one day when they're ready, they are able to purchase a home or purchase a vehicle, go back to school, or start a small business.
Now, am I right that most of the time, right, to get credit, you've got to have credit, and many times survivors either don't have the credit or have had their credit destroyed by the abuser. Am I correct? And has that been the case for either of you two?
Yes.
Would you like to speak more to that, Amanda?
Yes, at the time I had a few things that were in collections, of course, because of the unstable nature of my ex and two small kids. I wasn't able to work, so if you're not working, you can't pay those bills, and it's not his bill, so he's not worried about your credit. And they never, for whatever reason, they never had that long-term, hey, this could help us out later on to the road if we take care of this collection. But so it was a big process of building up those numbers and then showing us tricks. This is how you do it. These are the things everybody knows to do, but these are extra things you can do to help get that solid basis and get those numbers up, because otherwise, I mean, if you had to pay for that advice, you would have to be very
tools that you need. And so the microloan program helps to repair that credit score.
Yes.
Through a no interest loan.
That's right. So therefore, when they go to apply for a home loan, they will be approved because their credit score will be right. And then also they will have the money for the down payment.
And then talk to us about the IDAs, which I think, are both of you involved in, or just you all tell me?
I did the IDA home loan.
Okay, yes. So what is that, Marisa, in definition, and then they can speak to the process.
Okay, IDA stands for Individual Development Account. We have two of those programs right now. The first one is what we call a car IDA, which helps survivors to be able to purchase a vehicle. They save up to $2,000, and then the program matches funds of $2,000 so that they have $4,000 to purchase a vehicle or to use as a down payment on a vehicle.
I see. Okay. And so you you said that was the car, and then are there others?
We do. The second one we call the Classic IDA, which helps with home purchases, small business, or post-secondary education to go back to school.
Okay. Again, all leading to self-sufficiency.
Yes.
Okay.
With that program, they save $1,000. It is matched with $4,000 so that they have $5,000 for one of those assets.
I see. And so, Amanda, you enrolled in that program.
Yes.
So what was that like?
One of the first steps is that on your own you save $2,000. And for me, that was actually the easier step. And of course, also meaning, what was it, like once every 2 weeks with Marisa working through a financial budget. And that was the biggest part of that workbook, is just knowing how to budget for a home and all your expenses.
And so were you successful in that program?
Yes, I am now currently a homeowner.
Yeah.
Now that I have that down, everything else will be easy.
That's right, because you have a permanent, stable
Yes.
place to live.
That's awesome.
That's congratulations on that work. What we know from the research is that the number one reason why women either don't leave, women or men don't leave abusive relationships or return is financial in nature. So they're worried about how to take care of their kids, where are they going to live, maybe they don't have a job. You can fill in the blank with a whole host of things. And so I think you're speaking to that piece, that once you get those things in order, to stay back or to not become involved in that relationship is easier because you have those needs met.
You can be more clear in your thinking when you're considering the option. You know,
Absolutely.
why are you going back? If it's just for financial reasons and you have that covered, you don't really have the desire to go back.
Yeah, and I don't in any way mean to minimize it or to make it that simple, that it's just that. We just know that's the number one barrier that women identify. We know there are lots of reasons, right? Why? Because the victim isn't responsible for the victimization.
Right.
That's the abuser and the
Right.
power and control cycle that is involved in domestic violence. So Amber, what about you? What program did you access? I think you mentioned the microloan. Is there another program that you're involved in or just that one?
The microloan was, that's the big one that I did, wasn't it? I don't think that was my first, I'm getting my toes in the water, you know.
Okay.
But she is participating in financial literacy classes.
Yes, I go to the financial literacy classes, and there have been several of those that had, you know, like guest speakers, and like we had, wasn't the Western Kentucky, there was a college class that I went to, and we talked about
Mid-Continent University.
Yes, Mid-Continent University, yes, and that was really helpful. Because I think today a lot of the jobs that you can achieve financial success, financial self-sufficiency, you have to have at least some college experience, and you know, so that's one of the barriers that's in my way, and I have, you know, multiple people offering to help me with that, and so it gives me the courage to go ahead and try to do it.
So for Amanda and Amber both, I mean, obviously, you sound like you have benefited from the initial programs offered by the Merryman House, the advocacy, just the education, identifying what domestic violence is. Can you all talk a little bit, in addition to the financial and economic support, which we know is key to helping you rebuild, which part do you think was the most helpful in helping to save your life?
The meetings with advocates, they're very helpful.
That's what I was going to say.
Definitely.
Knowing that somebody cared and somebody was on your side, because
Right.
that's what the word advocate is, and that is absolutely when I learned what the word advocate meant.
Would you agree with that also?
Right. You know, and drilled it in. This is the cycle of violence. This is the cycle of violence. Do not forget, this is the cycle. And, you know, I mean, they were always giving me handouts. You know, this is the warning signs. This is what to look for. And
The red
sometimes,
flags.
right, the red flags. And sometimes, like, you're not even aware. You're like, that wasn't even this relationship. This was some other relationship.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, you know, because, I mean, that education isn't really mainstream like we think it is.
Right. It's not. We're not as well educated as we think we are. You know, like I looked back and saw that most of my relationships had been fairly abusive in one way or the other. You know, I wasn't accepting a healthy relationship because I didn't know what it was.
And Marisa, just as the staff expert sitting here, what would you say to that? Why is that? Does that come up for many of our clients? Just talk to the issue of the cycle of violence and abuse in general.
I think that before you can even begin to wrap your mind around housing and school and purchasing a vehicle, first of all, your safety, but secondly, just knowing that there's somebody there that cares, that understands, that's going to listen and support and validate all of the experiences that you have been through. That is just the main thing, and just you have to have that support system before you can get started on other goals, long-term goals, or even short-term goals that you're gonna, that eventually that you'll set for yourself.
And I think it was, actually may have been you in a previous conversation, you said something to the effect of, and you all can nod if she's also said this to you, but that many times women that come out of domestic violence relationships, obviously the crux of that, right, is power and control, because their options have been so methodically dwindled down, they aren't even aware that they have options. That particular framework isn't present, that you not only have the right to live in a safe and healthy environment, you have options. And I think, was it you that said that that is the first step, is showing women and men, primarily the research says women, that there are options. What has that experience as a staff person been like to see that light bulb of, I have options, go off? And then you two can weigh in as well.
Well, it's just amazing, because I guess I kind of think that this is just knowledge that everybody has, but they really don't. And you need to, just you explore all of the options, and when they realize how many options there are, and that they are able to choose those options for themselves. They don't have someone telling them how to do it or when to do it. They can choose the option for themselves, and they explore those options and decide which one is best for them and their family.
And what is that freedom like?
It was really one of the biggest moments for me, that when I would meet with my advocate, with Marissa, when I would ask her what I should do, like what do I need to do, because I constantly had somebody telling me what it was that I should do, what choice I should make, and if I made a decision, it was wrong. And even if I made the decision that I thought he would make, I'm thinking really hard, like, this is probably what he would decide to do, and then no, that's wrong too. And so I wasn't allowed to make decisions. And when I would ask Marissa, what should I do? What am I? She would give me the options, and she would tell me that I could choose. That that they didn't want to make decisions for me, because decisions had been made for me constantly. And it was the most empowering feeling to know that even if I make the wrong decision, that I got to make it, and nobody's going to come down on me and, make my life, horrible for the next week, and I'm not going to have to feel guilty and awful and be put down. I just got to make the decision. No extra strings attached except the consequences of the decision, and that was amazing.
What about you, Amanda?
Part of me, I think part of the isolation came from, at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom because I had the 2 little girls, and when you're in that position, you don't have the income coming in, you feel so, just being so isolated, because just being a stay-at-home mom, regardless, it's an isolated, you're just around the children
in your own world,
in your own little world. And for me, I think a big point was knowing when to seek help, knowing something's not right here, but can I actually go and get help? Well, if I say, oh, well, he just had a bad attitude, will they turn me away? And knowing at what point you need to seek it. And that was a big part of that power and control, and knowing when to seek.
And so, for those stay-at-home moms that may be watching that are in a completely healthy relationship, right? That's not who we're speaking to. We're speaking to those stay-at-home moms who, by nature of the unhealthy relationship they're in, they are being isolated, battered, harmed, and have no way to reach out to
It's a
someone
vulnerable
else.
position to be in, because that's the nature of being a stay-at-home mom, which is a lovely, wonderful thing, is staying at home with your kids and raising them and spending time with them. But you're in a vulnerable position when you have an abuser that you don't understand is abusive, and then they have the opportunity. You just don't realize it.
And I want to, before our time is quickly running out as it always does, and one of the things that Amanda, you brought up was the filing of a DVO, or an emergency protective order, a domestic violence order. You know, what we know is the myth is that that cannot be effective. It's just a piece of paper. But what we know from research coming out of UK is more than 50% of the time it is extremely effective in stopping that that violence. And so advocates are present, right, to talk about that process. Right. What was that like for you?
It was good, you know, to know my rights, and I felt it was effective. You know, they know that if they break it, you know, there were going to be consequences. And of course, you know, they, you know, made you aware, at all times you need to be aware of your environment and stuff, and that's just common sense kind of stuff. But, you know, it worked for me, you know, knowing, and also the fact that I could put on there certain places where I knew I would be, that I would not want him present, so that I could feel safer, knowing, you know, how much distance is allowed. If I went into a public place, you know, and I saw him, how, you know, how much distance that, so that was helpful.
So as we kind of wrap up, I'd like to, Marisa, for you to briefly tell the viewer, why is it important to be self-sufficient, to reach out for help? And then I'd like to give the final brief statements to these two ladies, just to tell the viewer anything you want, and then we'll wrap it up. We got about a couple of minutes, so we need to kind of be brief.
It's important for survivors to know that they can make it on their own. There are programs, there are opportunities out there that will help. You know, you're not having to jump into this completely by yourself. There's a support system, and there's a lot of different programs specifically for survivors of domestic violence. So it's just getting in touch with people that can point you in the right direction, so that you're able to be self-sufficient, so that you are able to live a life free of domestic violence.
Thank you, well said. What would you wish someone would have told you that might be watching today?
I think while in the relationship, one big thing why I stayed as long as I did is just fearing that, knowing that if I left, you know, I'd have to go out and work and be able to support the kids, that they would in a sense lose something. But by doing it, we've all gained. You know, they're better, I'm better, and it was worth it.
Beautifully said, thank you. Amber?
I didn't know that it was important for me to be happy. And I didn't know that in a healthy relationship that you're both working together to try and be happy and healthy and fruitful and prosperous. And that if you're not, then it's not a healthy relationship. And it was that basic. I just didn't know. I didn't know that I was worthy as a person just because I was a person. And I think that with the statistics that 85% of families are dysfunctional, you know, we're not the minority. We are actually probably the majority, and that it's okay to be who you are no matter what it takes, and fear will hold you back. Don't let it.
Well, thank you all for coming and sharing your story with us. I know that there are points of pain and points of promise and victory, and so I just thank you for being open and vulnerable, because I do believe that there are viewers watching that can relate, and they will hear you much differently than they will ever hear me or hear Marisa. So thank you, because I do think it is a part of the healing process. Thank you, Marisa, for all your work with women over these past decade as we save and build and change lives. And thank you for joining us for the Life and Legacy program, because the Merryman House is committed to saving, building, and changing lives so that those lives can go on to create a lasting legacy for those they love. We'll see you next time.